Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for Star Trek Strange New Worlds Season 3 Episode 5 Through the Lens of Time. This video is a part of a series of videos where I review new episodes of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, so I have to start with the spoiler warning for Strange New Worlds up to Season 3 Episode 5. If you have not seen this episode yet, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, I'm just going to be upfront and just say it outright that this is my second least favorite episode of the season so far. Now, granted, it's way ahead of what I would consider the worst episode of the season, which is last week's episode of Space Hour Adventure, whatever it's called. So I do think it's quite a bit above that. In fact, I would say it's only slightly below episode 2. I would say the two are kind of on par. But my main issue with this episode is that I felt like the tone, the pacing, the storyline was all very inconsistent and kind of all over the place. And for example, like, I feel like the episode started out like a comedic episode. It was doing all the, light-hearted comedic music, the dun dun dun. It was dealing with like soap opera things, like with Lon talking to Chapel about, oh, don't make this weird. And I think it's interesting that she's saying that her and Spock are just friends with benefits, basically, and that's not something Star Trek normally does. Like, I thought that's what they were doing with Pike and Patel in Season 1, but apparently other seasons proved that, no, they have a full-on relationship. So I don't know where they're going with this. I'm still up in the air of whether or not I think it's going to work. But the scene here with Lon and Chapel, yeah, it was kind of silly. And then you get Chapel being the supportive girlfriend to Roger Corby, and that was kind of silly. And you had the whole storyline with Ensign Gamble, the new nurse, and how he's so excited about, being in the away team, and I fixed all the beds, and that was kind of lighthearted and silly. And then you had like Chapel and Spock and the Turbolift having an argument, and then Gamble came in and interrupted them, and he's like, oh, did I just interrupt you? It was very comedic. Like, the whole first part of the episode was like very comedic, and then it turns into like a weird sci-fi scenario. They find this hidden temple underground, and it has like, technobabble nonsense playing with time and space and the dimensions and shit like that. So it turns into like a sci-fi sort of exploration, archaeology, Picard kind of thing Picard would do in TNG all the time. And then it turns into a possession horror episode where the demons, the evil demons possess people, and they risk like infecting everyone. And so it's like, it felt like the tones of the two different storylines that were happening concurrently, with Ensign Gamble being possessed by this evil demon, and the tone of the landing party trying to figure out like this sci-fi puzzle in order to escape. It felt like these two storylines kind of clashed, at least the tones, at least for me. I know that some people might see it differently, and it didn't really seem to tell like a coherent, consistent story. It seemed like the plotting was just kind of all over the place, and so that was my main complaint on the episode. I will say, on the positive side, is that, and this is something I'm noticing as I'm going through Voyager, because Voyager will have several instances where it will have this side character pop up out of nowhere, and then they like die or do something important. TNG did it a couple times too, maybe even DS9, but especially Voyager. which is more egregious for Voyager because they're trapped in Delta Quadrant and characters shouldn't just pop up out of nowhere. And also they had like a whole bunch of recurring characters that they could have used but instead just stopped using them or killed them off, and then just had random characters pop up out of nowhere and do something important that episode and die or go away. So I do really appreciate that the way they handled Ensign Gamble in this show, because I think it was pretty likely that they knew what was going to happen in this episode, that they were going to kill him off. And so they want you to care about him being killed off, and they want you to care about M'Baga's connection and affection for this young man. And they did a good job because they introduced him in episode 2. And he popped up in a couple other episodes. I can't remember exactly which ones. Hold on. He was in 3 episodes: Wedding Bell Blues, Shuttle to Kinfori, and Space Hour Adventure. So 4 episodes actually. IMDb hasn't updated this episode to it. So he's been in every episode since episode 2. And I like that. That, again, this is the kind of continuity that Strange New Worlds does that I really like. And I think maybe I'm contrasting it because I'm watching Voyager at the moment. But still, it's really refreshing to get that. And it's not just comparing it to Voyager. It's not just comparing it to 90s shows, which were very different. They were made to be more episodic because there wasn't like DVD collections or streaming services back then when people could just watch older episodes whenever they felt like it. So, but not just comparing it to that, but also comparing it to Discovery. I think this is a better show than Discovery, just flat out, just overall in the way it's made. And I'm reminded of that in this episode because Discovery had all these characters who were there almost the entire 5-year run who you didn't know anything about, you didn't give a shit about, yet this show got us to care about this guy who only appeared in small roles in the background for 4 episodes. And we cared more about, or at least I did, I cared more about him than I did about Detmer or any of the Woshigan or any of those other people that we knew nothing about in Discovery. And I also, I talked about this before, just the style and the way the show is shot and the tone of it and is way better than Discovery. They don't fall into the spinny camera thing and try to make it. It's not just the spinny cameras. They try to make it like they try to emulate J.J. Abrams style, which pisses me off, of being really kinetic and energetic and people talking fast and blah, 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 we gotta do this. And it doesn't do that. Like even in episodes like this, it feels more like the style of TNG, Voyager kind of thing, where people are, they don't have to spin the camera around and have them talk fast. They have nice locked camera scenes and where there's just dialogue based and it's at a good and normal pace, and they don't have to constantly shout things out. I could just imagine, for example, the scenes when the La'an, Spock, and all those people are trapped in that weird compound thing. If Discovery did, I could imagine them just being real fast and being oh, what should we do now? No, don't do that. And the camera spinning around. I just like this show. I like, even in episodes that I don't think are that great, like this one, I still think it's overall a better show. And I just got to point that out because I was reminded of that in this episode. Not that I didn't like Discovery. I did like the later seasons, as you know. But I still think overall, in terms of tone and style, this is a better show. But anywho. And I'm hoping that Starfleet Academy isn't going to be that same tone and style of Discovery. But I'm worried that it will be. But anyway, that's another story for another time. But anyway, so they had Ortegas Brother showed up as a character. I'm not that interested in seeing him again, and the whole thing about being a documentarian or whatever, and having like the camera in everyone's face. Like, I just hate that cliche. I don't know. I think it's just tired, and his whole sort of flirting he has going on with Uhura is like, I don't hate it, but I could not care less about it. I'm gonna put it that way. And I don't think he really contributed much to this episode. But anyway, sorry. I was also talking about Gamble, and how I thought it was very... It's interesting because this is the episode that kind of focused on him the most. And I kind of got that sense at the start of the episode that this would be like his big episode. And the thing is so I was watching a review. Someone was comparing this to like Game of Thrones, where Game of Thrones, if you have this character who's like a background character, or a light character, a recurring character, you don't see that much, and they come up and they have a big moment, especially if it's a big heartfelt moment, you're like, oh, that character's dead. That character's definitely gonna die by the end of the episode. And the thing is that thought never even occurred to me, because that's not a Star Trek trip. That's not typically something Star Trek does. Like with Star Trek, if there's a character you've never seen before and it was their first episode and they come up and be like, oh wow, all of a sudden it being really important, you're like, dead. Dead. That character is dead. Voyager did that. Now, to be fair to Voyager, I think they did it a couple times with or at least that one time with that one dude who got his face ripped off by the Vidians. He appeared in one episode before, so it's an example where it wasn't just the first episode. But usually these one-off characters, you're like, oh yeah, they're probably gonna die. But recurring characters, especially someone they've been building up, they've been slowly introducing, and now they're starting to build them up, it never even occurred to me that he would die. I thought, because Star Trek usually doesn't do that. Star Trek usually, if they're starting to build up a character, then they're building them up to become a recurring character. So it's interesting that, totally wasn't expecting him to die. And as I said, I bought the sort of relationship with M'Baga and how important he felt to them. And, so I guess, I'm trying to analyze the episode and think about it, and, is the episode trying to say that he was dead the whole time? That as soon as that bright little thing ripped out his eyes, that he's dead, and the person who was there after that was that demon that took over his body, because M'Baga was saying that he had no brain function, no brain activity. And so was that evil demon pretending to be him? Because they kind of kept going back and forth, and I got the impression that it was like a battle between Gamble and the demon thing, and that sometimes Gamble would take control of the body. They certainly implied that when Gamble was holding the security guard at phaser point, and M'Baga managed to talk him down and convince him to go in the brig. But maybe that was I don't know, I'm starting to think in retrospect maybe that was the demon, and he was just did that to get out of that bind, because he knew he was in a tough situation, so he just pretended to be Gamble, and knew that he could break out of the force field. Which that was a pretty intense scene when he grabbed he could told the security guard about his mother and shit and stuff that he shouldn't know about, and then grabbed him. Also when he mentioned that to M'Baga about his daughter and everything, so this demon can read people's minds or whatever apparently. And yeah, so looking back on it now, because that's what I think that's what the ending is implying, because that's what Pella was saying when he, Mbago told him, was like, fight it, and Pella was like, no, he's already gone, he's already dead. Now, as for the whole, the whole thing with Pella saying, "Oh, this is pure evil," and she gets the heebie-jeebies around them, and especially at the end when she's like, "No," when Pike's like, "Yeah, it's not. Evil is relative. Good and evil is relative," which I agree. But she's like, "No, there is real evil in this world." I was like, that's cheesy, and I hope they're not setting this up to be a recurring villain, because it's just it's cheesy. It's just too cheesy to me. It reminds me too much of like the evil world, universe-ending AI that almost destroyed the universe, all sentient life in the universe at the end of Picard season 1. Like this silly, like over the top, like, and also Control from Discovery. Like, we don't need like a universe-ending like demon thing. Like, I wish Star Trek would move away from that, or Monotrack, because old Trek didn't really do that. That wasn't really their thing. So, I mean, the original series had a bunch of like evil godlike creatures, but that was different. And then TNG had the Borg, but that was also different. I don't know. Maybe the Voyager's version of the Borg wasn't so different because those were cartoon characters. But anyway, and I think Prodigy had world-ending villains as well. I can't remember, but anyway. Oh yeah, it had the Langoliers in season 2, which I thought was dumb. But anyway, so yeah, I wish Monotrack would move away from that. So I hope that they don't bring them back. And that whole thing where at the end of the episode where Mbaga was operating that computer console on the wall and he walks away and we see it blip, and I think it's trying to imply, ooh, they're still here. Like, I hope not. Please no. Please don't do that. Please don't bring them back. Like, this episode was fine on its own, but if there's one thing I think that I liked the least about this episode, it was that the evil demonic villains. Like, I thought like the storyline of them like possessing Gamble's body, and like how he knew all this shit, like that was creepy. I thought that was effective, but is when they get into the background and like when Spock was looking at them on the planet and they were like, oh, you came from an evil dimension, and and it just comes off as really schlocky to me, very hokey, and especially at the end when Pella's like, oh, they're pure evil. I'm like, no, just no, don't do that. Just don't do that. And I will say the one thing I was really, really reminded of was Event Horizon. Because first of all, the guy who was possessed by the evil also ripped out his eyes. This thing had ripped out his eyes, but he had no eyes, but he could still see, sort of. So it's like the same as that. And also, just because the whole thing in Event Horizon was they were doing an experimental ship where it could fold space in order to travel somewhere, but when they went into the other dimension and brought back an evil with them, and which is what it seems like is pretty much the same thing with deal with this episode, where they were inferring that this old ancient alien race that created this temple or whatever, that they were trying to get into different dimensions or whatever to try to solve mortality and become immortal. And doing so, they brought an evil back with them. Dun, dun, dun. So it felt very similar to Event Horizon, and that's not a compliment because those aspects of it is what I thought was really cheesy and dumb about Event Horizon, and so this feels really cheesy and dumb here as well. And also, like, where I'm very curious to find out where they're taking Captain Battelle's storyline and why she's still in the Enterprise. I thought she was leaving, but anyway, yeah, what they're doing with her story, like the whole thing with how as soon as she saw Gamble, she's like, "It's you," and like turned into something else, and like something possessed her body and took it over, and so they're thinking maybe, oh, it's the Gorn DNA. But then that would beg the question of what is the Gorn's relationship with these evil demon things, and some people are bringing up the possibility that this could be used to humanize the Gorn instead of making them be evil xenomorphs, which is something I was very much against. And it's inconsistent with the original series on top of that. So I hope that's the case, but we'll see. We're interested to see where they're taking the storyline. Speaking of being consistent with the original series, the way that they portrayed Roger Corby in this episode was very consistent. It felt like it was actually doing a good job setting up for what our little girl's made of. So the next thing they have to do is just have Captain Pike hold a very phallic-looking rock. But anyway, but no, because Roger Corby seemed interested in discovering immortality and the cure for mortality, and that's what his driving motivation in that episode was when he discovered this, race of ancient androids, whatever. He could transfer their people's consciousness into them, which is what Picard eventually did, but totally different. But no, his like obsession with mortality and having his obsession with his archaeology findings, that he was willing to put everyone's lives at risk in order to continue his research, and he had this obsessive behavior with it. So they're definitely. So I think. Yeah, I was actually impressed that they are doing a really good job setting that up and setting him up. And I did like some of the character interactions in the planet between Spock and Chapel, and how Spock deduced that effect precedes calls in this area, and so that they had to convince Chapel to walk out and void, and saying, "Oh, the bridge will be there," and saying, "Trust me," like this. So those are interesting moments. But yeah, I don't know. I still felt like the whole evil compound was I don't know. But I did like how they had the alien who was there. It was their planet, and that they involved them instead of just barging in and doing whatever they want, and actually trying to be respectful towards them. And I like how when Spock was at an impasse of whether or not they should go forward or turn around, that he asked them about it. He asked the alien dude. So that was interesting too. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I had to say about this episode. So my rating for Through the Lens of Time out of 10, it's going to be a 7. Very good. It was it was fine. As I said, there were some things I liked about it. I liked some of the character interactions between Spock and Chapel. I liked some of the weird sci-fi shit that they did, how they were all in the same room but in different dimensions. That was kind of interesting. I thought the storyline with Gamble being possessed was creepy, especially when like the demon guy knew stuff about people, and that was all very, it was effectively creepy. But until you get into the whole the evil demons that are ancient, ooh, like that's when the episode lost me. And as I said, like it was totally inconsistent in tone and plot. It did feel like that these separate storylines didn't really mesh together, and it started out being very comedic, but then turned into a horror. It didn't. I don't think it worked. It was a well-structured episode, I should say. That's what I'd say. So 7 out of 10 for me. And yeah, I really must say that I do very much hope that they don't make this like the big bad of Strange New Worlds, because we don't need another villain like the evil AI from Picard season 1 or the Control from Discovery. Like, we don't need a world or universe ending bag. Oh no, especially if they're pure evil. Like, please don't. That's what I'm saying. Please don't. But anyway, that is it for my review of Strange New Worlds season 3, episode 5. I will be back next week to cover episode 6. So be sure to check me out for that. And also currently covering every episode of Star Trek. Currently covering season 4 of Deep Space Nine and season 2 of Voyager. You can check out if you want to. So yeah, be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.